Call to order the Lake Mills City Council for November 19th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Here.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
And Mr. Fields previously informed staff that he'd be unavailable this evening.
Would all who are able please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Correction and/or approval of the regular and budget work session for City Council minutes of November 5th, 2019. We can do the approval of those two together. So if there is a motion for both,
So move.
for both, okay. And a second?
Second.
Okay, are there any additions, corrections, or if not, call the roll.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, correspondence. Does anybody have correspondence to share with the rest of the council and staff? It's kind of a quiet week for me. It's, people on Mulberry Street are very happy to have most of their road back to normal. And, they let me know that when they see it.
Yeah.
When they see me. So, okay, no other correspondence. Moving on to questions and public comment. And I have to read it no matter what? No. We don't have anybody in the audience tonight. So I am going to suspend with reading the statement about public comment, and we will just move on to the city manager's report. Steve?
Okay, so you see attached to the agenda the check register for October, the general fund check register, the utilities check register, and then the police department monthly report. Also, to help Vicky not cringe so much during the city manager's report, I provided a list of things that I would report on. Couple things. We've been invited to do a presentation at the Wisconsin City Managers Association on social media policy.
About what?
Social media policy.
Oh, okay.
So we're a leader in that area, huh?
Apparently, we haven't been real enthusiastic about this, but I guess we'll do it. So that's one item.
How did they find out?
I don't know. Did she tell you?
There was a little bit of news coverage on it. There was an article that was written in the paper, and I think that it's kind of just naturally been absorbed by other cities. A lot of cities are dealing with that issue right now, so it's top of mind.
When is that going to be?
Sometime in February.
Oh, okay, so you have a little time before that.
Yeah, we'll have to go to Elkhart Lake and tough it out.
Oh, that's a tough one.
The siren at Brookstone does work. During the last
Was
test.
there was a problem?
Yeah, there was a fault in it that shorted a fuse, so they fixed that and put in the fuse, and then they tested it by the local one, and it worked, and then we waited for the monthly one, and it worked. So that we're sure that it works.
That's better.
It is, yeah. We had some problems when that tornado went through. We didn't get an alarm out there.
The South Main Street still got a couple punch list items going. We set a final resolution on a change order today, and so there's some paperwork going, discussing a PIM for the next phase. We're going to do that and some other issues, so that's continuing to move forward. Biggest question on Mulberry Street is that punch list isn't done, so the street isn't officially opened, and that's why the barricades stay up. And until the street's officially open for the season, those barricades are staying up. Because that's how the state controls anything that goes on in there, because if you do damage to it while it's still a closed street, or you're involved in an accident in there while it's still a closed street, you got problems. You don't have the normal.
So that's something we really need to warn residents from.
So they keep asking why the barricades are there, that the street's open. Well, the street isn't technically open.
Right.
And so that the state does that to protect themselves from getting sued. So they're the ones that make the decision on whether it gets open or not, and that's based on how the contractor and the contract are positioned. So, based on that information.
Is that going to screw up the plowing?
Pardon?
Is that going to screw up the plowing?
Well, we asked that question early on, and the state didn't seem to care because they said by the contract that we signed, the SMA, we agreed to plow snow. So we have to figure out how to plow around it.
We do have some people who think it's a race car drag strip, because they're just going zoom. Mulberry. We'll have to eventually get some police coverage for that. I think it may be just a few people.
Street maintenance contracts, they're still finishing off a couple sidewalks and patches. So the two sidewalks I know they're working on are by the library, and they're also doing that driveway. Might have done it today, probably later this week. But I know they're planning on working it. Same with one on Fremont. Patches, I did a bunch Friday. They're still looking at doing several this Friday. Hopefully, the weather holds.
Yeah, it's supposed to be quite nice.
We're discussing the new state grant. And the top conversation piece in staff has been the intersection of A and V. And probably the biggest problem with that is that it's still in the county.
The what?
It's still in the county. It's not a city street either direction. Our jurisdiction doesn't start until down by Prairie on A, and we don't have any of V. So, we're going to discuss that this week, see what we can get done.
Well, does that mean that we have no jurisdiction at all?
Yes. Police can
Highway
write tickets
jurisdiction.
because they have legal authority into the city and out of the city, but as far as city staff being able to make decisions about what's going on there, no. When we put sidewalks in, we have to get permission from the county. So like when we run sidewalks down there along County Highway V down towards the market, we had to get permission we had to file a permit with the county to do that. And same with driveways. On anybody who applies for a driveway permit on County Highway V, Tyrannita Park Road, has to get a permit from the county. Even though we review it, make sure that it's appropriately located for city zoning, they actually get the permit from the county. The Sandy Beach Archaeological Report, we had the meeting with them. discussed it with him this week. It's 90% done, but the morphological report isn't done, and I don't know when that's coming. The library, as I discussed, is pretty much complete. The needs assessment is on the agenda tonight. We're looking at our last lead service line report for this year. We anticipate that we'll have everything that we need done, and from here on out, it'll be basically, if we find any new lines, we won't have to do any new inspections, but if we find any new lines, we have to record that. And then all the lines that we replace, we have to keep track of and send in a report. That goes along with the grant we just had. In conjunction with that, we've been asked to do a presentation on an EPA seminar, which is nationwide, I understand, on our process of doing the lead service replacement programs. So,
Boy, we went from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile, huh? That's pretty cool.
I know a couple people who really think they have a lot to say on that topic, too.
Is the DNR going to lift the consent order on us anytime soon?
Yeah, I believe they will. But you know, there are several items that tie into that. Obviously, the
Replacement schedule.
replacement schedule and the corrosion control. Those two kind of tie into it. So I assume that once we get our the corrosion control report that we're going to send in here shortly is going to say, we recommend extending it another 6 months. So instead of being done on December 31st, it'll be done on July 1st or June 30th or whatever. And the DNR has basically indicated they would like us to do that. They can't force us to, but they would like us to. So we've kind of agreed to go ahead and extend that out another 6 months. Because right now, the data is very inconclusive. Hasn't provided them with anything that they find of benefit.
Did you accidentally miss the Mangan development?
There hasn't been a lot of change there. The only thing I know that's occurring is tomorrow there will be a meeting with our engineer, our lift station engineer, who's a new young man that I haven't even met. We'll be meeting with the contractor and an engineer to go over what the expectations are for the construction of that lift station. Other than that, there are several new buildings going up. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are 5 new buildings going up there, and
you can actually drive around and back out the other way. It's a little at your own risk on the far end.
yeah.
It was like, do we want to? So we did. But it was a little scary. The mud is,
We're keeping an eye on that.
do it before you wash your car.
We're keeping an eye on that at some point in time. Because it's a fire lane, the fire chief can order that.
Right. But that was why we checked it, to see where this fire lane went. Because that was always one of my major concerns at the beginning. So I was happy to see there really was a back entrance. So,
The automated meters are picking up, especially the water ones. Got a lot of electric ones done, and they've been going at a pretty strong pace, but water has now started to stay at pace rather than falling behind. The Brookstone subdivision, that's done. The punch list is 90% done. And we anticipate that that'll be on the December 4th agenda as a accept public improvements. The electric construction is going well. I haven't found any problem with the frost in the ground. The Grenmar subdivision is advancing. We started design of the public improvements. The TID amendments are in process. And we put WISDOT on notice that there would be a change in the water main at Mud Lake Road, County Highway A, and South Main Street.
Speaking of TIDs, SB 560, Senate bill. What are your, I know Dan and I talked a little bit about that, but
It's a bad deal.
yeah, I think so too.
And Dewey every year presents, Dewey Strobel,
Yeah, yep.
every year presents several anti-TID proposals. His strongest supporters are Democrats. It historically hasn't gotten very far. I don't know if they'll throw him a bone this year, but if you want, we could put that resolution on an agenda and send it to our legislators, telling them that we are not in favor of those changes.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, because, do you guys know what we're talking about?
Not much.
So, one of the big changes that this bill would do is it would change, if you go to amend a TID, it would require a full consensus of the Joint Review Board to amend a TID. So everybody would have to vote in the affirmative if you needed to amend a TID. So it could put a damper on adding territory into a TID for us in the future. So we'd really have to plan way ahead if we were going to build a TID to know exactly what we're going to do with it. But we've amended the past two,
Oh,
at least,
no, we've amended four.
four of them.
Well, we amended two. We amended four twice.
Yeah,
We've overlaid 7 over 4. We are in the process of amending number 5.
yeah.
And we're in the process of amending number 6, but that's not a territory amendment. That's a value amendment.
Okay,
With the personal property that came off, all TIDs lost a lot of that. That personal property value came out of the TIDs, but it didn't drop the original base, so they're allowing everybody to go in and amend the TID to the new base. But yeah, we've amended territory on TIDs multiple times.
yeah. And that would put us in a bad position, because I don't think we've ever got anything unanimously through the Joint Review Board
Once.
once.
Yep. TID, when we did the second amendment on TID number 4, and we included the construction of Birch Street, they voted yes because they wanted us to put in that second street for their reconstruction of the elementary school.
Gotcha.
But that's the only time our school district has ever voted for.
So the Joint Review Board always approves every time we amend, so what this new legislation would do is it has to be unanimous.
Unanimous,
Correct.
yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Well, what is it designed to do is add another hurdle to prevent changes?
Yes.
Yeah.
His original goal was to make all TIDs illegal.
Oh,
And he's scaled back every year. But usually, Mr. Strobel, Legislator Strobel, will present 2 to 3 TID-related amendments every year to try and strip TID of anything. Of course, it's not very popular because everybody in the state knows the only real tool in the state of Wisconsin for economic development is TID.
Yeah. I would just hate to see a fluke happen and all of a sudden something gets passed and it goes to the governor for signature, because that would put us in a bad spot.
We also have to get to the governor so he doesn't sign it.
Oh, yeah, we would have to get to the legislators first, the senators. And that's what Steve is talking about, put together
Yeah.
resolution to say we don't agree with it, to send to the legislators. So,
We've been working on some plat work related to the golf course for real estate transfers to make a little bit more room at 1204 South Main Street. And looking at possibly running East Lake Park Place through. And I have TID law changes, so we've done that. Other than that, are there any questions?
Back to Mulberry Street, they just threw grass seed out on the last part of the project. Will they be coming back in spring and doing something that's real?
What they're hoping for is to be able, they have to come back and lay down an erosion mat.
Not in front of my house.
I know they haven't, but they're supposed to.
Okay,
So that what they're hoping for is to get weather good enough. That's one of the reasons why they haven't officially opened the street, is because they leave it closed, so, and at some point, hopefully they can come in and lay down the erosion mat, because you're not supposed to let open ground set all winter long, because it creates erosion problems. So they're waiting for the EMAT. And one of the biggest issues they have is that the DNR requires 70% immersion before they allow you to claim that you've met the
right.
establishment requirement. And based on the way the seeding was done at the time of the year, they're gonna have a tough time getting 30%. So it's anticipated that they will be back doing some level of reseeding next spring.
Yeah, the early stuff is going well.
Yeah.
That turned out real nice. But the later stuff, I guess it's on the grace of God to see if any of the seed gets past the birds, because there's nothing covering it.
yeah, it depends on what seed they use. A lot of them now have that stuff that
Birds don't like.
repels the birds, yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we'll see, but, okay, I got it.
So the only thing I had was just a product I wanted to talk about real quick, since Diana brought up the issue of people using different parts of the roads or different places as speed races. I saw this product, gosh, about a month ago, and it's called a smart speed bump. And it actually only activates if the car is going over the speed limit.
That's a good idea. Wow.
I've seen those, I've read about them.
Yeah, I don't know much about them. I just,
Your insurance company will probably fight you,
yeah.
because what's happened is because it activates only when the car hits a certain speed, it generally creates a hazard that creates a larger percentage of accidents.
Yeah, I see they're putting them in quite a bit in Europe, but obviously they have different laws than we do.
So
They
they
don't have a
different
speed limit on the
expectations.
Autobahn.
It's, there was another one that I saw where it was 3D crosswalks.
Yeah,
And, but again, certain people were driving along and all of a sudden they see this thing that looks like there's depth to it,
yeah.
and it freaks them out and they swing off the road. And so it's, they're kind of neat ideas that didn't have the result that people were looking for.
A lot like roundabouts.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
No,
Kind of
I
like
like
the first one.
roundabouts.
I do too.
The first
Some of 'em I
roundabouts were
like.
probably pretty scary.
Yeah.
They've done a lot better job.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason DOT requires a study before you do any changes to an intersection is that going from a stop sign to streetlights costs about $250,000. Going from stop signs to a roundabout costs about $200,000. annual maintenance on a streetlight is about between $25,000 and $35,000 a year. The annual maintenance on a roundabout is zero. So you get a feel for why they want to shift. Then, on top of that, the severity of accidents drops by 75% because most accidents in a roundabout are glancing blows. Most accidents in a T intersection or a cross intersection are T-bones.
Yeah.
So the severity of the accident drops substantially. So they make the road safer and they reduce the cost. So they're a good idea. The design is the key. You got to design a good roundabout.
Well, we're getting used to them. You know, it takes time.
Yep.
Gotta learn.
It's hardest on the oldest people because they didn't grow up with it.
Yeah.
It's hard to get to know.
Practice makes perfect.
So, I guess sounds like you've been keeping busy, Steve.
There's more yet on that, so if you want all of it.
Yeah, I want to hear all.
The Mangan thing, is that going back to Planning Commission with site plan change?
No.
No, that's something you can handle?
They submitted a site plan change to us based on the fact that state law had changed.
Oh,
So they had to make some changes to the design of their buildings based on fire control.
oh, really?
Yeah.
There were some
so-
state law changes, huh?
Yes, so we reviewed them and decided they were de minimis and in compliance. They were actually more in compliance with what we'd want to see than they were before, so I don't think that we complained about them at all.
Okay, sounds good. Well, with that note, let's move to council business. Item 8, miscellaneous licenses. Would you read those two names for us?
We have 2 tavern operator licenses for Jaden Radke and Ali Sugo.
What is the pleasure of the council? Do I have a motion for those two
I
tavern?
make a motion to grant Jaden Radke and
Suka.
Ali Suko for tavern operator's license.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. Moving along to the Humane Society contract. All right. Oops, gotta get to that item. Would you read the title and heading for that?
City Council Motion 19-11-2-1, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the City of Lake Mills and Humane Society of Jefferson County.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So move. Motion.
Do I have-
19-11-2-1.
And a second? Got a second, Vicky seconded it. Okay, discussion. Well,
Have we had any problems?
No.
if
Been
you
pretty
have,
standard. I haven't had any complaints at any level. There's always, some pickups and some drop-offs that are a little less than smooth, but generally, people are happy with the Humane Society. There aren't a
Yeah.
lot of other options, and historically, those options have proved out to not be very popular.
I just find it interesting. Every year I look at it and they base it on one price for every man, woman, and child. It just seems kind of weird, but that's
It-
just me.
It tends to be popular among the towns to sell them that way,
Yeah.
because obviously there are a lot more in the cities than in the towns, and it looks like they're paying a lot more. But the other options are, because they try and do it on they don't have any idea how much pickup is going to be, and they don't, Nobody runs the data consistently. Even if cities did, it's unlikely towns would, as far as how many were picked up and dropped off. So the other method, because you're required to do this by state law, the other method is more like property tax. And
Yeah.
so you would do it on assessed value. I don't think the cities would be any better off on that one than they are by the population, so.
No, I just, since the census is only taken once every so many years, you're like, how do we figure that out every year to make it?
They, DOA does a projection, an estimate, and
What is DOA?
Department of Administration.
Oh,
And they annually submit to us what they think our population is, and that's what we use for most all our.
Gotcha.
The one thing where we don't is Jefferson County Economic Development. They use, used to be the big GIS company. But they use their estimates because they believe they're more accurate. And from what I can tell in the last 20 years, they're probably right. I don't know if you remember, but when we hit 2010 and we actually got that census, our population took a huge jump. And then we run this kind of flat line. And then I anticipate we'll take another huge jump. And they generally estimate us at about 1.4 to 1.5%. And that's not too bad, because we generally end up averaging somewhere around 1.7 to 1.8%. So, but when you're at the end, it looks pretty big after 10 years.
Yeah.
But they do it across the board, so nobody's actually at the right population. They're all kind of underestimated.
Sure.
One other question. Has there been any problems between dogs and coyotes and picking up coyotes or hybrid coyote populations at all?
Not that I know of, but I don't really follow that very closely. It might be a better question, if you want to follow up, send it to me and I'll have Nick check it, because he'd be the one taking more of those types of complaints. Chief Selk.
what is the correct procedure if you have stray dogs in your neighborhood that
Call the police department.
it is? Just call the police. Okay.
Thought it was get on Facebook.
Well,
That doesn't help.
Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
yeah, okay, so just call 911 or,
You can call the local police department, or you can call the non-emergency number at Jefferson County, or you can call 911. They will take it in that form.
okay. Well, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any more questions or concerns or changes? Seeing none, call the roll.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, we are done for another year. Item 8C. Okay. Discussion decision on authorizing an agreement for a consultant architectural firm to perform a library needs assessment and feasibility study. Would you read that motion?
City Council Motion 19-11-2-2, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for a consultant architectural firm to perform a library building needs assessment and feasibility study.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, now we can discuss it. Do we have any questions, comments, amendments?
No, so we had talked, I understand we had talked about this in the past. You said, was this budgeted in 2019 or 2018?
2019,
So we have, what do we have in there for that? What is it?
$15,000.
So we're off a little bit.
Yeah, he'll have to, he has ways of generating his own funds, either through the trust fund or the other fund, or his copying and fees.
So it'll come out of the library, the
Yeah.
excess.
Okay, so,
There might be some, with a little bit there might be some additional things, but he thinks he can cover it,
Yeah.
surveys and
this-
stuff like that.
It was kind of interesting looking at those range quotes. Couldn't understand what in the world. That's why I asked for that information. Why was there such a big disparity? What were they truly asking for? And it just
I think,
crazy.
excuse me, the difficulty was in the RFP, you know?
Yeah.
And really, when you're asking for a needs assessment in this situation, the library really didn't know what the expectation was.
Right.
So we struggled with that, and there was a lot of play in the numbers. Different consulting firms were thinking different amount of time going into it, different services being provided. And that's why the library board created the ad hoc committee to go through the process of interviewing all four of the applicants, and then made a consensus after that, made their recommendation to the library board, and then the library board took that recommendation, and you're provided with that motion today. So there was more of a process here than maybe is typical, because of the interview after the fact, and the difference in the bids themselves.
Yeah. So do they get do they rent out sections of it for meetings, things like that? Is that, they get funds back from that? And,
And they run a lot of copies for people,
yeah.
and
Do we actually have like an average daily use for the library? Is there anything like that? Because I saw numbers in there talking about like usage of 10,000.
oh, you mean, yes, the library keeps a lot of data on who's there and what gets used and what doesn't get used, and how many people throughout the city and the town and each one of the towns use the library, and how much they lend out around to other library systems. Yeah, they keep a lot of data on that, a lot of data on how many people come in and use the computers, the internet. They've got all that. That's generally in their monthly report.
Yeah. So this is going to come back and it's going to tell us, or tell the library board, you could use this much more space and these
Potentially
different
addressing the
programs.
programming, the organization of the library, what contemporary uses of libraries like this are. I think there's a heavy movement away from actual books to,
Yeah.
digital media and stuff. Other than that, there is a building assessment, a needs assessment there, in what would potential expansion plans be? Does the current facility, is it ADA compliant? Do they, what would be kind of the next step for the growth and prosperity of the library?
Yeah, especially for the future.
Yeah, and my understanding of the different laws, unless we venture into some sort of a large-scale renovation, most buildings don't have to do the ADA thing until they go to a big renovation.
That is generally correct. However, I mean, this is, it's inviting the public there, and even if you're not required to be ADA compliant, oftentimes to serve the populace, that it's
Yeah.
a good step in that direction.
There are a couple of different issues here too, because you have a historic building. And so you're not gonna get crushed on that. So when you do the addition, they're gonna look at is that available to someone there in the new part, that they don't have to have it in the old part, and those types of things. So if you're accommodating one part while maintaining a historic building, you're gonna get away with a lot more.
So you brought that up. Historic building, how do I want to word this? With the damage that happened in 1980, is it still considered a historic building with all the rebuilt?
I think again, may have even got the historic designation after that.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Just asking this stuff so I know.
The shell was still there.
Yeah.
And it was rebuilt like the old building was. A lot of it was.
Yeah.
I kept that in mind.
That's all I had. I just had a few questions, so I knew.
Well, is there a timeline on this when they expect to actually do something and?
I do not know.
No.
Just as it comes along?
I think as they start to work through it and figure out what they can get for their money, they'll kind of develop a timeline and
I had heard, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I had heard that they'd like to do a children's wing to the north. Is that still?
of the uses that they get, that's probably the most significant use that they still get at the library.
That's what I was wondering.
So and having children in the basement isn't the optimal use.
No,
So
no.
I'm sure that that's probably, if I remember correctly, and this has been a while, because I think, can't remember if it was Susan was still here, or if Gerard just got here and we had our last assessment. That was one of the things that was mentioned in that
People
assessment.
talking about wanting to have natural light where the children were, rather than like they are now.
Yeah, and discussions that has.
Come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just wondered. Sounds like a good idea to me. I think we're ready to call a roll. Okay, please call a roll.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. Item 8D, Resolution 1951. Would you read that for us, please?
Resolution 19-51, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the city of Lake Mills and Jefferson County.
I move adoption of resolution 1951.
Second.
Okay. Well, we have that. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or changes?
It looks the same as
Okay.
every year.
Let's vote on that.
Ms.
Just one question.
Yep.
As usual, been working okay?
Yeah, it works fine. I think eventually everybody in the county will go to it. Somewhat, there's some problems with, like Watertown being partly Dodge County.
Yeah.
But I imagine at some point in time, with the way things are going, and the digital requirements and the information requirements, it'll pretty much all go countywide.
Is there a lot of discussion on, I've been reading a lot of stuff about, the technological improvements and so on that are coming in. Is that getting to be a point of discussion amongst
All the chiefs have been meeting with the county dispatch, and they have come to an agreement on what kind of technologies they're going to use in the future, so that they can all communicate, and has kind of become consistent across southern Wisconsin, and that we will all go through one provider, and the county will actually purchase it, and then we will repurchase it from the county, so that we get the best contract possible across the board. So that's kind of what's been going on. The technology has been highly reviewed. There were multiple options. We did go with a digital option, and because that both Waukesha, Milwaukee, and Dane and Rock are all digital now. So if you're going to be moving across all those zones, you got to be able to communicate.
Have they had any problems? I've heard another problem is staffing the, I forget what they call it, the
Dispatch?
control room. The dispatchers.
Yeah, no, No, not here. You get governing? You get the governing magazine?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. Because they were the ones that wrote that report on a shortage of dispatchers, but no, we haven't seen that yet. We've seen it in police officers, but not dispatchers.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call the roll.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Recommendations for future agendas. Anybody have something now that they want to put on for the first meeting in December?
Do we still have some meetings that we need to schedule for branding?
Yes. So yeah, if you want to start emailing me and let me know what you want to do, we can start that up again.
All right.
I think I wrote a report that I sent out maybe in August. I'll go back and
Can you
look
send
again.
it out again?
Okay. And then we can work on that.
Would there be time to do it at a meeting, or do we have to adjourn and go into a work session?
We'd go into a work session yet. At the next meeting, we're gonna do all those fund set-asides and then encumbrances and transfers. So you'll see, Betsy will have a long list of items on the next agenda.
But there might be, that'll go pretty fast.
Yeah, generally it does.
Do we want to do
This
something?
is Gerard's item, which is $15,000, but it wasn't in the capital bond money. It was in the operations budget. So instead of doing the normal set-aside, we have to do an encumbrance. So it's a little bit different process. But
We're lucky you know how to do those things. I wouldn't know how to do them. Thank you. So, would we then, do we want to look at anything with branding after the next meeting in a closed session?
Need a work session?
Yeah, I mean, work session, yes. Not a closed session. Thank you for correcting my error.
It depends on if,
Probably not just before Christmas.
Okay, so you're thinking January?
January.
Yeah, January at the earliest.
You weren't as much of a hurry as I was.
We're really shifting into we're already way into next year.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, listen, put it on the agenda when, but I'm thinking if it's an agenda, if our regular agenda, like tonight, we're done by 8 or 10 to 8, we could do half an hour work session after this if we had to. Well, we were going to do a closed session, but I mean, if we didn't have a closed session. Rather than come in early, because I think sometimes it's hard to get here early.
Either way.
Okay, food for thought. Okay,
how about some of the reports that we got concerning, well, the archaeology,
that'll be a while.
that's going to be a
Restaurant.
while yet.
okay.
Yeah, I think around January 1st, we'll get that, and then we can pass it on. It'll be more of a, because that goes right straight to DNR and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And we'll meet with them again. They've asked us to file for another grant to cover the cost of what do they call it?
The stewardship grant with regard to like education and documenting what was found on the site, making,
Okay.
public displays, et cetera.
Oh, really?
So there's the ability to apply for stewardship grants, and at the meeting, when we were discussing with the DNR and the consultants, the archaeologists on this project, they thought that this was something that was worthy of that, and that there may be state money or federal money even available for it.
We would have to do this, or could we work with an organization such as the Historical Society, or?
I guess I hadn't really thought that through. We own the property. It's our development, so it would be our grant application. There may be interested parties or parties that would be willing to lend their support to that grant application.
That's all they'd look at, is parties willing to lend their support, because they're going to lend the money, they're going to give the money to us, not the organization.
Right.
So if they lend their support, even if they were the filing group, the DNR would still look at us as you're the agency, so. The other thing is we'll end up with a phase 3 out of this for sure. So as we go into the phase 3, it won't start until spring. So you're probably looking at the final report being done sometime in late April, March, or May, and early May. And so then getting the grants finalized, the documents finalized, and the design ready, we wouldn't be doing construction until fall anyways, which kind of was what I was hoping for, was to not start until after September 1st, and then kind of construct up until it got shut down in the winter, and then start again in the spring, and hopefully have it open again before Memorial Day. So that's what we're hoping for.
Well, I guess we're ready for item 10. Would you read that, please?
Convene into closed session pursuant to with stats 19.85, sub 1, sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction, and 19.85, sub 1, sub E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Okay, is there a motion to move into closed session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
We are in closed session. Well, will be when we move our bodies. And we will not be reconvening publicly. We'll just reconvene in order to